Welcome, everyone. We have a special procedure with our what we call humanities people. They managed to help us to get relaxed and start every seminar session and conference 10-15 minutes later because of their special worldview and approach of the universe. But now maybe I can ask them to join us. And welcome, everyone. This is, for us, I have to hide that I'm kind of moved. This is the 31st summer university. Can you imagine that? 30 years ago, we started here in this building. This, this platform here did not exist. That was an attic out of use, and I don't go into details. 30 years ago, we came to the conclusion that Kőszeg is the right place to conduct and maybe start what we call Central European discussions about the future of Europe, of future of Central Europe, and maybe the globe, maybe the universe. And I think we were right. I said 30 years is nothing except of in the life of a human being. So I skip a short history of this 30 years, but I have to tell you one important thing, that time iASK did not exist. We had a foundation which is still active. It's called the Institute for Social and European Studies Foundation, ISIS. And there's a private foundation in that time which was more full of optimism, I would say. I wouldn't say more opportunities, but we had it's reflected in the titles of the summer universities that we had a lot of hopes about a quick development of East and Central Europe's integration into the European community and then the European Union. That this ISIS Foundation managed to start all this change which are prevailing and dominating our life here, including a recalibration of this small city, which was seen as a beautiful one, but something which is sleeping, which was the Iron Curtain city. Kőszeg is at the Austrian-Hungarian border, and there was very little hope to change this. So social, cultural, political, psychological state of affairs. And now I proudly say that maybe a tiny little bit we did contribute to the change positively. And as a result, in the last 30 years, we got twice the entitlement of a European, Jean Monnet European Center of Excellence. We also got a UNESCO chair in cultural heritage management and sustainability in 2011. And most recently, we started to cooperate very actively, dynamically, strongly with the United Nations University chain of institutions, which means for us, for the time being, that we have a good chance to become the 14th institute of UNU, United Nations University, which will be a separate and independent body, academic institution, but iASK is going to be, hopefully, the partner and receiving institution. So here we are, and the question is how to go further. Yeah, we had this wonderful debates and discussions with fantastic people, diplomats, writers, statesmen. We had here Arpad Gönc, we had here foreign ministers. We had wonderful cafe blooms. I will tell you more about it. Cafe clutch discussions with leading intellectuals and writers. And we certainly created a good network. But it seems that the situation today in the world and for the European Union is how to say it, getting a little more intense than just considering further summer universities and having nice coffee clutch and nice visions about the future and talking about cultural heritage management, which is a beautiful thing to do, and this is what academics should do, researchers should do. But I think the situation is getting a little more hot, not just in this room. We are trying to make it a bit more cold for you, but around us. And so here I have to say a special thanks to people who made this possible for us. We were standing on the shoulders, as it said, of giants. And younger generations not necessarily know these names, Elemir Honkish and Ivan Vitányi, and of course non-Hungarian friends like Erhard Buzek and many, many others who are not with us anymore, but whose heritage is with us. The spirit of openness, of cooperation, of networking, of being able to listen to other people with very different kinds of opinions. And that has become one of the characteristica specifica of this place. It's kind of one step more than the Chatham House rules. This is the Europa House rules. That we do listen to each other. We don't accept here political, ideological propaganda, but anyone can tell her or his opinion about anything. Okay, so this is not, we don't consider you as a leftist or a rightist or, no. People come here with questions, with suggestions, and I hope more concrete steps forward a better future. So I have to say special thanks to these people. Unfortunately, not too many are with us from that heroic times of mid-90s. I have to say a very special thanks to someone who made this possible in a very, very obvious way. This is Jody Jensen, who was an absolute, how to say it, professor, whose contribution was just immense and still is, and we needed that kind of insider, outsider, outsider, insider approach here to move a little bit above of our little navel-gazing, self-pity Hungarian, Central European approaches. So thanks, Jody. And now I have to mention that we have wonderful new partners. We're not very successful with partnership with bigger universities because we are here an advanced study institute with a very special, very special agenda, very special methodology. But now it seems to me we found some kindred spirits among the bigger institutions, such as Ludovica, which is the Hungarian University of Public Service. And I have to say a special thanks to them because they're not just letting us using their logo, but they co-financed this meeting and they co-financed our winter school. Their representatives are going to join us in the coming days. And I have to mention something which is a good sign, I think, a good sign concerning the deep changes which are going on in Hungary, and I think elsewhere. There is an absolute, as I mentioned it in a positive way, an over-representation of Hungarian and Central European diplomacy. The Hungarian Foreign Ministry offered us help and contribution, and although they are incredibly busy now to revitalize the V4 cooperation, so some of our great supporters are unable to be here in person, but they delegated their colleagues who are exactly experts of our topics for today's and tomorrow's discussions. So I have the pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Gellért Horváth, who is not only an expert of Albania, and I think the other Western Balkan countries, but also spend a significant time as a participant in the work of the Albanian Foreign Ministry. So please, Gellért, give your talk, and then I will introduce the other panelists. Okay, oh, that's fine.
Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Professor, Excellencies, my fellow panelists, and the community of iASK. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm representing my state secretary who couldn't make it, Christian Mészáros, but he's also sending his best wishes to you all and the success for the summer university. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak today about the future direction of the new Hungarian government's foreign policy. Few issues played a more prominent role in the recent election campaign than foreign affairs. Even from the international perspective, the election was so significant that Hungary attracted an unprecedented amount of media attention. Voters were asked to make a fundamental choice what kind of approach best serves our interest, where is Hungary's place in the world, and the Hungarian people made a very clear decision. The new government's foreign policy will be based on a simple principle. Hungary belongs in the European Union and in the NATO. These alliances are not merely institutional arrangements, they are communities of shared interest, shared responsibilities, and shared values that have underpinned our security, prosperity, international standing for decades. At a time of growing geopolitical uncertainty, division is a luxury that Europe and the transatlantic community cannot afford. Hungary will therefore work to strengthen unity within both organizations, acting as a constructive and reliable partner committed to dialogue, cooperation, and collective action. A stronger, more cohesive European Union and the united NATO are essential not only for the future of Hungary, but for the stability and security of the entire continent. In the spirit of this new constructive approach, since the election, Hungary has approved the 20th sanction package, the opening of the first cluster of Ukraine's accession negotiations, and we decided to lift the blockage within the European Peace Facility, just to mention a few. Thanks to our approach, an important milestone has been achieved in the Hungarian-Ukrainian talks on minority rights as well. The new Hungarian government has demonstrated that we can achieve results through negotiations and the clear representation of our national interest. As a result of these efforts, we joined the consensus on the opening of the first cluster of Ukraine's accession negotiations. That was the beginning of this week, as you might remember. We support Ukraine on this path, but we must meet the same criteria as the other candidate countries. So we think that balance is very, very important between and equality between the candidates. For a successful enlargement process, it must remain merit-based in accordance with the agreed methodology that the EU decided over in March 2020, like 6 years ago now. Hungary also has a strategic interest in the EU accession of the Western Balkan countries. The stability and security of the Western Balkans is essential for the EU. The EU's presence and involvement in the region is also crucial. Therefore, the EU must not overlook these countries in the enlargement process in the future. The new government must not only determine Hungary's place within the European Union, but also the European Union's place in the changing world order. Europe today faces a growing number of challenges that no nation can overcome alone. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, increasing geopolitical competition, economic uncertainties, irregular migration, climate change, emerging technological threats, all test our resilience and our ability to act together. In this environment, our strength lies in our unity. Hungary believes that preserving the rule-based international order is essential for maintaining peace, security, and prosperity in our continent. International law, respect for sovereignty, and strong multilateral institutions are not abstract principles. They are the foundation upon which smaller and medium states like Hungary can safeguard their interests. We must therefore work together with our European and transatlantic partners to defend these principles and ensure the cooperation, rather than confrontation, shapes the future of Europe. One of the most significant challenges is Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. It is important to underline some basic principles. Hungary fully supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We firmly condemn Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. We believe that Russia's behavior poses a threat to Hungary, Europe, and the global order as well. So, we will act accordingly. We condemn violations of territory and airspace of all EU and NATO member states. We will not accept any attacks nor threats against our allies in the future. When we look at further proposals for sanctions against Russia, our guiding principle will only be Hungary's national interest. We support every measure that has a clear impact towards achieving a ceasefire. Any new measures should ensure that Hungary's energy supply and economic interest will not be affected. We support all efforts to start meaningful negotiations for a sustainable peace that will guarantee long-term stability and security for the European continent. We think that Europeans should be presented at the negotiating table. The new Hungarian government is not planning to change its policy regarding supply of weapons to Ukraine. We will not provide any lethal equipment, but we will support Ukraine in its fight in other possible ways. Another key challenge for the EU is how to respond to China's emergence as a global power. We recognize the challenges that China poses to our interests, values, and security. However, economic realities cannot be ignored. China is one of the largest FDI partners in Hungary. We welcome this, but we also want to make sure that all investors comply with health, safety, and environmental regulations. Hungary is leading a pragmatic and interest-based relationship with China. Our approach is guided by national interest and mutual commercial benefits, while ensuring this partnership does not pose any security concerns. In this context, we are concerned that China is enabling Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. It is essential that the European Union act in unity on matters related to China. Nevertheless, China can be an important partner in addressing global challenges such as climate change. The United States is one of Hungary's most important allies, a great friend, and an essential economic partner. Our deep-rooted partnership is based on shared values and democratic principles. This has not been and will not change. On the European level, we should strive for as much flexibility and pragmatism with our American friends as possible. Hungary's and Europe's interests and priorities will always be the first when it comes to developing our partnership and action with the United States. Strong trade ties between the EU and the USA not only bring economic benefits, but also ensure geopolitical stability. We therefore consider it important that building on the framework agreement, a long-term, mutually beneficial trade system be established that adequately addresses the expectations and concerns of both parties. The US is also our most important partner when it comes to security. For this reason, we would also like to strengthen our cooperation with the United States within the NATO. Hungary remains committed to meet NATO requirements and fulfill the objectives agreed under the Hague Defense Investment Plan. Our goal is to have a gradual and sustainable trajectory. We have already reached 2% target in 2023, while also even exceeding the 20% target on major equipment. The government remains committed to maintaining defense spending at least at that level. In the summary, in summarizing my speech, the new government's goal is for Hungary to assert its interest as a reliable partner, a member of the European Union and NATO, while striving for pragmatic cooperation with every country with which it is possible to do so. Beyond that, we would like to help ensure that Europe also stands up for its interest and remains competitive in the ongoing geopolitical competition. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gellért. Clear message, clear words. I think we needed that. But let's go on. Let's go a little and dig deeper. So, what analysts, social scientists, and experts are saying about this very clear vision and strategy. My pleasure is to introduce, well, it doesn't need much introduction, but introduce again, reintroduce Charles Vörösmarty, say our Charlie, with whom we have been cooperating. Actually, we started this room exactly 10 years ago. Professor Vörösmarty is a great and proud holder of a wonderful Hungarian name with some understanding of Hungarian language. But he's certainly not only a frequent visitor, but with his work and his expertise and his students from the City University of New York, Hunter College, they did contribute already quite a bit to our international success and producing papers and wonderful conferences. So this time, Charlie is going to be the keynote speaker. And is going to provide with a more global vision within which Europe has to find its way. And I don't want to go too far, but it's rather a labyrinth than just a very straight road. But I think we need that kind of complexity, and this is why we are here. iASK is the Institute of Questions, and difficult questions, and looking for answers. So, Professor Vörösmarty, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm going to try to do this from a seated position. I usually, in my classes, jump around the screen, but I think that would be too strange in this particular environment. And plus, it'll heat the place up. So anyway, I'm really honored to be here. Yes, indeed, it's been a decade. It's been a whole 10 years of really interesting thinking. And I remember when I first met this unguided missile, that, as I like to call him. That I realized that the openness and the dialogue that needs to happen globally was happening here, and it was happening in Little Köseg at the time. And I watched over the last decade building after building after building get renovated and made into what it is today. And it's an inspiration for the idea of a craft effort, and I will go over that in a little bit here. So here we go with the discussion at hand, and we are coming out of an interregnum, and I'm going to capitalize a little bit on the temporal aspects of that in the next few slides. So I don't know, is someone advancing the slides? Oh, I do. Okay, and okay, why not? Why not? And yesterday at dinner, after a little bit of wine, we kind of renamed this witchcraft.
This is a new invention of this.
I hope you understand the witchcraft. Okay. Anyway, but it is a choice time. And let's talk about some of the factors that are going we are going to encounter as we move forward. So I'm going to use this philosopher whose origins is in New York City sports. His name is Yogi Berra. He was on the team as the catcher of the New York Yankees. Then he became the manager, and he always had these crazy quotes that didn't make sense, but they did make sense. And the one that I like, and the one that I think is particularly interesting for this discussion, is the one that's up there. If you come to a fork in the road, take it. And just think about that for a second. And there we are. That's what he's talking about. Okay, so go left or right. Well, you have to take the fork. Which way do you go? Okay, well, maybe we can recast this as if you come to an interregnum, deal with it, and look at what we're facing. We're facing lots of choices, not really guided with the history of success, as I will demonstrate, on some of these major strategic issues that we're going to encounter as we enter the post-interregnum period. So let me go forward and just organize the thinking here. I want to deliver this notion that there are 3 time horizons that we have to talk about if we're going to be planning for the future. There are 3 essential infrastructures that we have to rely upon in order to make that happen. And then what I'd like to do is I would like to take a synthesis, if you will, or a synergy of the ideas that have been placed forward by iASK and Craft in terms of creating a synergy campus, okay, and how that could all be woven together. So let me start with the time horizons. Okay, we all remember what it was like a few years back, living through COVID, and COVID was front and center in terms of our newscasts, in terms of our worries, and in terms of how we were going to plan to come together as a united humanity to try to overcome this problem. And it was really a unidimensional focus, if you can remember. But it's important to recall that there have been lots of such pandemics, and some of which with much, much larger implications for human population. So there are these punctuated events that capture our attention for short moments, okay? We're in some cases blinded by that myopia, but it's also sitting within these larger transformations, let's say, strategic transformations, and this is just my little summary. Sorry if the timeline is not accurate enough, but we're talking about large-scale human dimension questions like the exploration and colonialization era, industrial revolution, the Enlightenment, post-World War II, globalization, and then now the information age. Okay, so these are kind of the human wrappings around the long history from year 1500 to year 2050. And on top of it all, there's another time dimension. So it's not this intermediate multi-decade or small number of century time frames, but what's happening irrevocably. And I just show one of many, many, many examples. This happens to be human population and the distribution now toward an urban environment versus a rural environment. And if you just look at the top curve, it's exponentially increasing. I've spoken about this many times, but that's what's been happening irrespective of these little events, I call them that, but they are events, but they didn't do much to change the trajectory of the broad term. Okay, so there are three ideas that I think we need to fold into this. And as I mentioned, we have immediate challenges, we have these broad transformational challenges, new world orders, if you will, and then we have this inexorable move towards a developed planet dominated by humans. Okay, and just to show that these things are a bit decoupled, and we have to be really careful how we look at them, I remember having debates with people before I came up with the data that, the COVID response of the economic system would show a big dip, and it would really be a clarion call to change the way we do business in terms of carbon emission and climate change. And okay, well, all well and good, but if you look at the data, there is a COVID dip. It does happen, but we're back to where we were. It made hardly any difference. And yet, because we were blinded by the COVID event, we thought, geez, this is really going to be something we learn from. It's going to be a game changer. And you can tell me if it's a game changer or not. I don't think it is, obviously. Okay, so this raised this notion of minding the gap, and Ferenc and I are sometime in the near future going to be articulating this in a paper. Concluding the idea. But this is a kind of a conceptual model of it where we have an environmental or social system phenomenon rising very, very rapidly, just like the population change question, just like the climate change question. And then we are really wondering what's going on in terms of the sluggish response by society. And as this exponentially, very rapidly increasing changes to the Earth system are happening, each year that we don't act upon it is each year we get a larger and larger gap, and it becomes tougher and tougher to solve the problem. And so the question is why, and that's what we're going to be diving into. Is it because of economics, geopolitics, poor information, the social psychology of change? Is it differences in cultures, lack of innovation, a misperception about the gravity of the problem in the first place, technology limits, on and on and on. And this could be a very long list. And that's what we want to explore. And I mentioned to a couple of people during the preface here outside that I'm going to be spending some of my sabbatical time here with a group that's going to be convened through the Ludovica University of Public Service to look at these questions in an interdisciplinary way. And I come to the question as an Earth system scientist, but the others will be representing social sciences, economics, social psychology, and probably AI as well. Because you need to do that in this context. Okay, so those were the three time horizons I'd like to touch on. And now there are three essential infrastructures. And the reason I'm raising this as an issue is that infrastructure is built, it degrades, and it has to be rebuilt. It's often mismanaged, and sometimes it doesn't exist at all. But at the regional scale, you really have to be thinking about what kinds of policy levers you could pull to optimize the infrastructure that you build for humans and make it functional and make it sustainable, okay? So, infrastructure here is the classic infrastructure, the gray infrastructure. I'm in the US, and I watched with amazement how the idea of investing in infrastructure, which was always nonpartisan, became this extremely contested, bitter fight about who's asking for it, who's getting it, what states are going to get it, what states aren't going to get it. And it just amazed me that they were battling over something so essential as installing good infrastructure for society. There's the typical infrastructure, but there's also something that we now talk more and more about is the use of nature-based infrastructure or green infrastructure or sustainable infrastructure. And that's entered into the dialogue over the last couple of decades, I would say. Now, here's just a set of pictures about atrophied infrastructure, and we call it the gray infrastructure because it's built by humans. And if it's not taken care of, if it's not planned correctly, if it's not maintained, and it's not optimized to the uses that it originally was intended, we have the pictures on the left. And what that means is that often in regions where you see this happening, the regions have a period of prosperity and then decline. And so that's why it's important to think of infrastructure, because it's where we live, it's how we generate economic value added and give people jobs and generate well-being. And if it's not taken care of, there's a very negative consequence. Now, there's also something called nature-based or green infrastructure. I think of it as something called regional ecosystem services, and in some work that my team and I have been doing, we create these regional ecosystem services portfolios, and we're talking about what nature gives to us. Nature gives to us carbon sequestration potential, biofuels, food production, water supply, pollution processing, wildlife habitat, recreation, and climate proofing the planet. And this is not done by the infrastructure we build, it's done by nature, and it's done for free, in essence, for free by nature. It's the bounty that we get by preserving these kinds of infrastructures. Okay, so on the top, we have well-managed infrastructure that's green. I'm showing an upland set of ecosystems feeding into a gray infrastructure on the right, which is an engineered dam, okay? And as long as you maintain good infrastructure upstream, you can actually optimize the operations of the gray infrastructure and at a very, very cost-effective level. If, on the other hand, you let the systems degrade, as shown on the bottom, you not only get degraded ecosystems, but the ecosystems that are connected to the gray infrastructure also become quite degraded. Now, in the middle is something I've highlighted in red. That's the third kind of infrastructure, which is the human infrastructure. And that really is talking about decision-making arrangements, institutional capacity, technical capacity to manage these kinds of issues, and the socioeconomic backdrop of any region we wish to look at. So I just want to make the point that these operate in tandem. So you have to have a human component that's managing whether the green infrastructure is going to be appropriately managed and protected. That will in turn help the economics of maintaining the gray infrastructure. So those are the three components that I'd like you to keep in mind. Now, for the human component structure, I'm not a human dimensions expert, but I do work with people who are. And I was particularly attracted to the craft notion as I became familiar with it, because it really does address all of the shortcomings of why we don't have good governance and why our ecosystems and our gray infrastructure, our built infrastructures, are in many places in decline. And the whole idea behind craft is this revitalization through economics. Cultural diversity is part and parcel of the thinking. Heritage is very important, and Kıvanç is a living example of the value that we gain from that thinking. Social systems to produce regional cohesion, of course, environmental sustainability, knowledge generation, incubators and innovation campuses to really break out of the old way of thinking. And regional networks. I think that craft is really dedicated to bringing partnerships together for the shared good. And as I also added a little bullet there, which I'm not sure is explicitly stated in the documents, but participatory planning. Yes, the co-creation is what I guess you would call it. But it's participatory planning with the communities that are going to be affected by this. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to say is that there's a whole realm of study that I think needs to happen in order to articulate what the modalities of decision-making are. I've worked with some historians, and what we did is we tried to look at some common features of how humans manage their environment historically. And what we tend to do, there seems to just be a habitual nature to the fact that we come into an area, we degrade the environment, and then we try to fix it. And often we cannot fix it, or it's extremely expensive to fix it. So the origins of that mentality have to, I think, be looked at. And so it's not just what's happening today, it's what's happened generation after generation. So looking backwards and looking together, earth scientists with social and human dimension scientists, is absolutely critical. Okay, now the third thing I wanted to talk about here is a notion of a synergy campus approach to all of this. And this will, I think, be part and parcel of the discussions that we have over the next week. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to just prove the existence theorem, if you will, that we've already been thinking about this for many years, and we've tried to articulate through a case study what it would be like to go through the process of creating a sustainable regional redevelopment effort for Pannonia, Western Pannonia in the region of Kıvanç. And we brought together students from Hungary as well as the United States, in particular from New York City. And we had about 15 or so participants back in 2018. And we came up with a blueprint, if you will, for regional redevelopment. Now, this by no means is comprehensive, but it's a first stab at thinking about these problems. And what we came up with in one of the simpler diagrams from the document that we produced is this notion of a circular economy where you insulate the regional economy from the bumps in the road in terms of external economy, whether or not you're closing down an ocean strait in near Hormuz is one issue. You want to isolate yourself from those kinds of shocks as we move into the future. Well, how do you do that? Well, you rely on human innovation, you rely on a trained workforce, and you rely on this notion that ecosystem services and ecosystem flows and stocks have value and should be protected and should be integrated within a broader context. And the broader context comes to us from craft, so it has to do with culture, heritage, educational capacity, tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all one big happy family. Okay, but it's hard to do. And this more complicated diagram is just one extension of that thinking. And this was a proposal that was submitted to the U.S. National Science Foundation. And at the end of the day, it was an $80 million effort to try to take, it was not funded, I should say, but what it was trying to do is try to take 3 states, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, okay, looking at the fact that they had that degraded built infrastructures, part of the Rust Belt. And it's also part of an area that really relies on hydrochemicals from petroleum products and producing plastics and things like this. Well, my colleagues in the chemistry world are actually studying ways in which hydrocarbons can be made more bioactive, and they use bio-inspiration from nature to try to engineer the chemicals that we put into our society. That was the whole idea. Can you take, at the regional scale, large feedstocks of what used to be fossil fuels and kind of make them into a sustainable feedstock system that's based on biology? Or even if you did use fossil fuels because you had to, because there's no other alternative, could you make that biodegradable at a set time frame and with set conditions, et cetera, et cetera? And you could do that. Our answer was you could do that, but you would need to do this through a huge partnership between universities, and we had several that were signed on, and about 40 companies to do this. And everything from Dow Chemical to Shell Oil. Okay. So, next complicated diagram, I don't want to dwell on this too much, is just to simply say that if we're talking about regional redevelopment, we're going to have to generate numbers. It's not enough just to simply talk about it. Navel gaze, is that what you said? Okay, so we're not going to navel gaze. What we really need to do is we need to produce return on investment, if you will. How can a region be reconfigured to produce jobs, to produce opportunities, to produce positive GDP, and do so sustainably? And I think that the way that you really need to think about this is to quantify it. We have to put numbers on a lot of these things. So we had a system of models that we developed starting a little bit before we began to interact. And in the US, we looked at the Northeastern Corridor, and we had models of water, food, energy, etc. We had data sets that were extremely geospatially detailed. And we put this all together, and we could generate outputs that we considered ecosystem services. So if you wanted to know where's the carbon coming from, in terms of, there's a map there in red and green, what areas of the region are producing extra carbon, which ones are pulling it out of the atmosphere, and the green areas are what the ecosystems are doing. So even in this very, very densely populated part of the world, you could have toolkits that essentially would do our job for us in terms of carbon sequestration. And we know how to run these things. And so we would do socioeconomic analysis, systems dynamic models, et cetera. Okay, just to give you that picture. Okay. Now, one of the things that I think we should be also thinking about in terms of engagement of stakeholders is to promote this idea of citizen science. And I started with a couple of my colleagues a non-governmental organization called the Next Generation Global Collaboratory. And the reason we did this is because about 24 months ago, we were informed that our 30-year project in citizen science was going to be canceled by Elon Musk and the Doge squad. And in point of fact, it was canceled for capricious reasons, for obviously capricious reasons, because we're working on climate change, international diplomacy, women in the workforce, DEI engagement, etc. They didn't like that, and they canceled us. So we decided to create a citizen science-based consortium internationally, and we've got about 30 partners right now, so it's been going really well. But at the heart of it is that people can take charge of the information about their social systems and their environment, and do so in a freely available form. What we're seeing is that the government and also some of the oligarchs are taking hold of and grasping all the information that otherwise should be freely available for good decision making. That's what we're trying to promote. Okay, and just as a visual here, the kinds of things we're talking about is giving citizens prolific opportunities to monitor what's going on in their environment and in their social systems through these microsensors, AI-based data integration systems, telecommunications using cell phone technologies. And we can do this not only in places like New York City, but we're going to be doing it in Africa and India as our first two study regions. Okay, now back to a little bit more of the practicality.
Yes.
Yep, practicality of a Synergy campus. I'm not saying this was the model for it, but it is maybe one model for it. My institute at the City University of New York is shown there. We have 5 different areas of science, very, very different scales, very, very different challenges and technologies that are used. Everything from global analysis for the environmental sciences group to nanoscience, where they're looking at angstrom level behavior of molecules. I mean, crazy changes in scale. But this was a dream that was conceived of 20 years ago, and now we've gone through, after it's been built, a 10-year period of performance. And although there were great hesitation about doing this at the university level, it was moved through, and we can now demonstrate some success. And I just put down some bullet points that over the last 10 years, we brought in $80 million of extramural funding with a 40% growth rate each year. We have 125 grants, more than 1,500 publications, now 200,000 citations, all within a 10-year period, and all counteracting the negative thinking that you can't do this kind of stuff. Well, you can do it if you organize it correctly. Okay, now, this is a very different looking building.
Yes, so.
This is a different looking building, and this is a potential for creating. Yeah, maybe, yeah, but it doesn't look like a gleaming glass building in New York City. But anyway, it is a potential crucible for all sorts of new ideas to come together, even though it would be a renovated space. It's not glass and girders. It's an antique building. Let's just face it. I'm not going to go over the details of this, except to say that there needs to be a structuring of the way this campus would work. And it's got to involve what I call a multiversity, which is many affiliated campuses. It's got to engage regional agencies as well as the federal government. Private sector is absolutely, in my view, absolutely essential to the future. We can't just rely on the government to bail us out of all these kinds of issues. And then created what we call a transformation space, using technologies and dialogues and coherence of purpose. And the idea is that through iASK and craft, that's where that will find its home. Okay. All right. So anyway, do you want me to stop here? Because I
Yeah,
will.
yes,
Because I will.
One idea, one
Yeah.
sentence. The message to Europe. How to come out from the labyrinth with this?
Okay, for the labyrinth. Okay. I go back to my philosopher. Another quotation. This is honestly a quotation of his. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I think that's the challenge. However, I think that there's hope behind the fact that we're trying to think this through, that we do want to know where we're going to be going. And it's a multifaceted problem. Investments will have to be made. The shining steel building that I showed you, where my academic home is, was a $350 million investment. Not to say that that's going to happen here in Hungary, but that's the order of magnitude of investment to get the kinds of output that we were able to see. So with that, I stop.
Clear. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Charlie. Very inspiring. But we have to move on. Time is not helping us. We have a wonderful panel here, and I think in medias res, we all know the question. The question is, what is Europe's choice now? How to get out? Can we? And if yes, how? To get out from this, what we call the labyrinth of interregnum. Interregnum can be interpreted by the panelists. You can use also your fantasy. The old one is dying out, but still with us, with its so-called rules and habits and traditions. And the new order is envisioned, but it's not yet here, with the new orders and regulations. So I would start with Elira Luli. She's an iASK fellow for 2 years now, recurring grantee, but she's also a lecturer at Luarasi University in Tirana, and slowly she's moving to the military academy of Albania. She's a political scientist and international relations expert, and also European studies expert. Lira.
Thank you very much for this introduction.
Sorry, everyone will get 4 minutes, and then another 2 minutes, okay? So please.
Hopefully we can manage now in 4 minutes everything we would like to say, but yes, but it's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to say to the participants that you will find here a space of dialogue, intercultural understanding and intellectual exchange, and it's quite unique, this format of gathering. And I'm sure many youngsters that are here present and many others will join in the next days, they will leave with lots of questions, new ideas and new perspectives, but at the same time we are very curious to know your perspectives from your point of view, because you are in touch with the everyday realities of your country and Europe. So what are the imperative choices that Europe needs to do now, to take now? What kind of direction Europe needs to take now? And what kind of future you envision for Europe? Now, to start with my discussion, I would like to really try to answer 3 fundamental questions that are already part of the panel description. And we try to raise these questions also in our joint paper, which was published together by you and you, Chris, and iASK, Europe's Choice, Getting Out or Lost in the Labyrinth of Interregnum, and you will find these papers disseminated through iASK social media. I think it's very difficult to answer to these questions because this moment of interregnum that we are witnessing right now around the world within Europe, it reminds me of Antonio Gramsci's idea of interregnum when he was writing Prison Notes in 1930. And he said, the old is dying, but the new cannot be born. And in this transitional period, a variety of symptoms appear. I'm not sure this is quite relevant right now for what we are witnessing in the world, because there is also a disagreement between scholars if this period is a post-world order, the world order we used to know, that was formed and forged after the World War II and then repurposed, redimensioned after the Cold War, or maybe this is a new world order emerging. So this is right now quite a disagreement between scholars, but there is quite a challenge regarding that, because if it's a new one emerging, it's not emerging in a coherent way, because we see different models of governance, different models of power. The world is being divided into blocks, and these blocks are operating based on their own rules, based on their own norms, but this is killing the spirit of consent, the spirit of multilateralism, and I think we need common sense, we need consent for the interconnected challenges that we are facing as humanity. So I think we need to keep the spirit of multilateralism alive, and I think Europe can do that, because Europe is a normative power, it's a regulator in that regard. Another challenge or dilemma that Europe is facing right now, based on these hard power politics coming back and these very hard challenges in the geopolitical space, is if Europe is willing to, or maybe it's ready to contribute to this new world order emerging, or it will have to adapt to choices made elsewhere. So this is quite a dilemma for Europe. That's why I think the direction it's taking now, and Professor Ferenc mentioned that this is the last choice. Europe has to take a direction, and hopefully it can take a direction. But when it comes to these autonomy, these strategic choices in the light of interdependence and fragmentation, one positive observation I have made recently is that many analysts, many scholars, many experts refer to European Union most of the time with the term Europe. That for me signals a change in mindset and also in political discourse, because they are referring to Europe as a broader geopolitical space, as a social, cultural, and political space that we all need to take care of it. And in this political community, in this broader political community, there are also key actors that are really important for the European space. And to mention some, it's United Kingdom, with whom European Union has reestablished relations, post-Brexit relations, in a very pragmatic way and based on mutual interest and mutual benefits and mutual interest. There are key actors from South Caucasus, Ukraine and Moldova. They are accelerating their speed towards EU membership, and they are very imperative for EU security architecture. And we have also the key actors from the Western Balkans, who actually their European integration path has been delayed. And we see how struggling it has been for them throughout this transition period in 35 years, looking for a ray of hope to finally become EU member states. And we see protests in Serbia last year, and they are still ongoing, and the protests in Albania are really showing to Europe that these societies are fighting for European values, so democracy, human rights, rule of law, and these fundamental values that are really imperative for EU normative power. When it comes to culture, knowledge, innovation, and how Europe can strengthen the European project through these kind of elements and through these kind of values, I think culture is a strategic infrastructure when understood as the antidote of many malign occurrences that have been happening in Europe. And coming from the Balkans, I know how culture can be really an effective instrument to divide societies instead of uniting them. So I think Europe in this regard has failed to build cultural legitimacy needed at the pan-European level, not only within European Union, because when it is used strategically, it can foster trust. It is really a precondition for hard and soft power. It can really build bridges, consent, and unify societies. So there is lots to be done in this regard. When it comes to what are the practical and normative dilemmas Europe faces in balancing sovereignty, solidarity, and global responsibility, I think this is a real challenge for Europe, because these three elements don't fit very well in the European reality. On sovereignty, for example, we have seen many times how member states still want to control over key decisions, especially in areas like security, taxation, procurement, defense. So there are a lot of issues.
Coming back to suggestions in the second round, okay?
Yeah,
Very important
I'm
that
closing.
you
I'm
mentioned
closing. Yeah.
Culture, but this is going to be the second panel, and we are going to continue with
Okay.
interconnecting these two panels. Sorry, we need to move further. You last.
Okay, but when it comes to these challenges that I mentioned, these countries, these member states, are not able to address these challenges alone. So that's the point when collective action come in, and also solidarity should be a guiding principle to address these kind of challenges. When it comes to global role of Europe, the EU sees itself as a normative actor, defending rules, climate goals, human rights, and multilateralism. But global responsibility is becoming more and more expensive and more politically contested within the European space and also externally. So the real dilemma for Europe right now, it's not just policy design, but finding the balance in these geopolitical circumstances and conditions.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to ask next Luka, who is also a recurring fellow, I would say, of iASK, and he's the vice rector of Alma Mater Europaea, a new private not very new, but quite recent university, private university in Slovenia, who not so many years ago was part of communist Yugoslavia. So how do you see what you heard from Elira and also from Professor Vörösmarty from a point of view of an outsider, insider, outsider? How does it look like? How to get out from the labyrinth?
Thank you, Professor Myslivec, Excellencies, dear colleagues. Obviously, we are witnessing a world where the, let's say, traditional international institutions and traditional international norms are crumbling, at least to a certain degree. What we call the English School of International Relations, this basic pillars of the international community are under immense pressure from great powers. We can obviously see that. So then there is a question what this means for smaller countries, for so-called outsiders to a certain degree. And it seems that there is not really much choice, because it is obviously it is obvious that we are returning to power politics, where smaller countries are becoming pawns in larger schemes. However, this makes it even more important that there is a defense of the international legal order, of the broader normative order of international relations, and obviously this is not easy, and the pathways to this need to be found. And Europe is in a special position in this regard. I remember at one of iASK's events, Emil Brix said, Europe is the last ideological battleground. It really stuck with me. I really remembered it. And what does it mean? I thought about it, you know. If we become plaything for the big global players, if the smaller states in Europe become playthings for bigger global players, this can mean nothing good. European Union is obviously a specific normative framework that is based on good values such as rule of law, economic cooperation, and so on. But perhaps this is not enough. And here I want to tie it back to finish my intervention to what Elira said, namely the cultural dimension. The cultural, even identity dimensions have been traditionally used by streams of thought that divide people, that divide nations, that divide ethnicities, and so on. So we can, and there is a great danger of that happening again in Europe and elsewhere. And because we are wary of that, we like to go the other way and say, let's move totally away from the identities of individuals, of certain, let's say, peoples on certain territories, to prevent that from happening. But this leaves an empty space, which can then again be filled by some, let's say, extremist forces with malign intentions. So perhaps we, as people of goodwill, need to find ways to tap into identities of individuals and to make them not exclusionary but inclusionary. So to give people to feel this need for identity, to feel this need for culture, but at the same time to do it in a manner that reaches out to other individuals, to their lived experiences, to their cultures, and to somehow include this in whatever might emerge from this interregnum. In what way this could be done, I have only a very faint idea, but I think that it is something that is important. If we don't seize it, there might come someone along that will. So, thank you.
Thank you. Very important suggestions and assumptions. Can you pass it to Kıvanç Ulusoy? Professor Ulusoy is not the first time here in the GÖSEG. Many years ago he started to cooperate with a professor at Istanbul University and specialist concentrating on international and European studies. So what is your answer to these interesting questions? We heard someone from outside of the EU, but hopefully soon it will be an insider, Albania, someone who is representing the European Union, but has some worries about the future, where we are moving from here and from that point of view. And Turkey, which is an applicant for a long time and forgotten and in a certain way frustrated by mainstream Europeans, but still a very firm member of NATO, of our security. So, Kıvanç,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ferenc. Apart from the contributions of the panel, you provided us with 3 key questions about Europe Nostra to frame this panel, actually.
Don't worry, we start to discuss now, we continue tomorrow. Forever.
We don't have time, it's obvious. And for this, for your questions and for this panel, I prepared a short presentation. It's related with what is Europe, your question, and how it is heading, and where is Turkey in it. Actually, it's I was thinking about a kind of meditation for some time that I have been doing, related with looking at Europe from outside. And I look at the Turkish case in comparison with 2, probably 3 empires that is surrounding Europe. One is Spain, the other is Russia, and the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, and finally Britain. So when you look at, I'm not going to tell the whole intellectual history of these 4 countries vis-a-vis Europe, because Europe has always been in the mind frame of the intellectuals and political leaders and politicians of these countries. And Europe has been always in the discussion of public spheres of these countries. And it has been so for about 200 years, probably a little more. Europe was in 2 modes, I would say, in the public sphere discussions of these 4 empires. I'm just putting Britain a little outside, but when you look at Spain, Russia, and Turkey, you see Europe and Europeanization as modernization, and Europe and Europeanization as democratization. So in most of the cases, modernization refers to centralization, rationalization of bureaucracy, and technological development, and basically the technical handling of the pressures coming from Europe. In democratization, Elira mentioned rule of law and representative government, freedom of expression and justice. So this has been in the internal discussions of these four countries. And what happened last? And we see Spain became a member of Europe and Euro, and you might have heard the phrase Africa starts from the Pyrenees. So these adversary, these anti-Europe or outside of Europe become an inside of Europe. So they have been able to overcome these anti-European structures of feeling, of mentalities, of something special to their country with a deeper process of Europeanization. We see democratization as well. In the case of Russia, you see a complete adversary. Because when you look at Russia, the Europe is actually nowadays even it is the main discussion whether Russia is part of Europe or not. So Russians in Russian psyche, and this is still I think a vibrant question. And I was just a few months ago in an interesting panel in Minsk, and I saw this case again. So why, where, if the war in Ukraine goes like this, where will be Russia ending? This is also an important public sphere discussion in Europe as well. And in the case of Turkey, we have been trying to become part of Europe, and this has been a key question for some time. And I see for the first time the Turkish case in an alarming way. When with the latest judicial decision of annulling the opposition party's Congress a few years ago, and we see that Erdogan's regime in entering to the place of the opposition party. Turkish politics has been identified with party politics. Turkey's politics is a vibrant politics, and it has been for the first time the opposition has been very seriously targeted by the regime itself, and this is turning to be a very serious question. So our relations with Europe again turns to be a very central question. If the things go like this, are we going to be an adversary of Europe like Russia, or are we going to be a part of Europe like Spain? So these three empires had their own, why they have this interesting shade that makes them.
Do you have any immediate answer?
Yeah, for the Turkish case, I really don't have an immediate answer, but I see the situation for the first time in an alarming level. So this means that the typical future of Turkish multi-party politics has been entering, and we are going to be a kind of Middle Eastern country like Egypt, or like Assad's Syria, where 90% of the votes are going to the regime's party, and the rest is not doing at all. So this idea of Europe, as you pointed out in your questions, has been still a vibrant question in these three empires, which had different trajectories vis-a-vis Europe.
Yes, but this is the question now, here and now. How to realize this idea under this double or triple pressure? Coming from Russia, coming from US, coming from the global environment.
Because
before you continue, I would like to give the word.
Okay.
We come back
All right.
To His Excellency Mladen Andrlić. He's also a frequent visitor of Kőszeg, a professor of international law and teaching in Zagreb Diplomatic Academy. Mladen, there is no time for a lecture now, but what is your reaction? Not only from a Zagreb point, but a Central European point of view. What is the message?
I mean, the situation is so trembling.
Michael.
Coming from one side, the other side, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I mean, thank you very much for having the opportunity to be with you once again, and in this very particular time, which is really trembling. I'd say here, there, and everywhere. Okay, you did your lesson, and you are starting new, from new in Hungary, but this is one of the one or two good news during last period of time. For example, for you who are reading Facebook or the things, you could read what Mr. Lavrov has mentioned yesterday, that Russia is approaching the situation where if Moscow is repeatedly in danger, that they have some buttons to push. This is a new phase, very serious one. I'm not neglecting what we are discussing here, because it's the essence. But the realities, the outcome, is quite interesting, huh? That Ferenc would say. I mean, solutions are here. It is not only what my Slovenian colleague has mentioned, international law, democracy, human rights, criteria, and so forth. It is the working with what you can. I mean, with no illusions. Okay, we have agreed. There are some global powers and small powers, or small countries and big countries, or whatever the matrix is. But we should all deliver somehow, where we could deliver. For example, those new ideas of renewing V4 or V4 plus, whatever the outcome is. I mean, 10 small are not the big one. They are still small. So don't have illusions and don't go in the wrong way. But all the efforts that could be done and accomplished by 10 smalls, let's say, I'm just saying 10, is it 4, 5, 6, whatever, is a contribution. We should provide contributions where we can. We should go to practice, to practical, concrete issues. For example, this 3Cs initiative has shown as a good way. In previous period of times, when you look at the European community map, not European Union, in these times of 70s, 80s, all the connections were, and everything was built in transport infrastructure, it was going east-west or west-east. And terrible lack in north-south connection for connectioning. There are some stripes here, there, and everywhere, but not the overall route from the Baltic Sea to the Red Sea, to the Black Sea and Adriatics. So now at least we have the idea what to do. And concrete projects are going on. So in this way we could contribute to the overall peace and stability and development with concrete actions in the fields where we could interfere. And I mean, that would be the message. I mean, I have a number of pieces and things. And just one memo on a nice Nobel Prize winner in the 80s. He was saying, you know, there was he was given a Nobel Prize for fostering the idea of small and medium-sized enterprises instead of transnational corporations, which are bad and this and that. So he said in his speech, he said, "Small is beautiful, but it's always small." Well.
Thank you. All right. Last but not least, our friend and colleague, Her Excellency, Ambassador of Hungary in Vienna, Edith Bátorfi. She's also, I would say, almost frequent visitor in Kőszeg. So, Edith, what is your vision about what you have heard? Yes, we should be small probably, but there are big opportunities and big dangers ahead of us. So, what is the potential contribution of Hungary and Central Europe?
Thank you very much. There were always threats and opportunities. The question how we reacted and what we did with the threats, were we prepared for them, or opportunities, were we prepared to take them? Just getting back to the very important starting point that Central Europe is, as we all know, the center of the entire universe. So let's focus on this very important topic. As I had a chance to work closely with the other Central European countries, and actually I'm working right now in Vienna, which is the center of Central Europe, or has been for at least 500 years, after a battle which has been fought at Mohács, and this is actually the anniversary year. And this very location has a connection to that topic as well. So I think that it's a very important question to ask whether Europe has a choice. It starts with this question. And further on, what fundamental questions we have to answer to discuss this choice issue. And as I see, we are a bit neglecting economic dependencies. We are focusing very much now on the defense and security related issues. We are very much on the fundaments of economic developments and strategies. We have seen that after the enlargement back 2024, as the 10 countries joined the European Union, that was a start of a huge boom for the European entire economic growth. It was more than 2.5 times growth from 2000 till 2025. If we compare it with the United States growth, it was like a doubling in this period. And then in case we compare it with the China and let's say Eastern Asian developments, we see a huge discrepancy in this regard. So I am a bit afraid that we are doing something not properly, because since that time there is a decline in the growth, there is a decline in the role of Europe generally among the other continents, let's put it like this, or let's put it like competitors like United States and the third countries, having in mind Asia and well, the global south. So, and now we have also competing structures and democracies or solutions. I just got now a book from Kissinger. He wrote The World Order 2014, and putting the question, peace, freedom, and order. So what is the right way of focusing on these questions? So you can have peace without with order, but without freedom, which will not be tolerated. We have seen it in very many ways in Europe. And the other constellations are not always optimal. So let's see what situation and what factors we have that can influence our choice for the future of Europe, on which we have to work, there is no question. But again, we see a situation that we had a strong partnership of France and Germany as an engine of Europe, and it's over. So what's going to happen, perhaps because of some bad decisions, and I wouldn't put only Corona, COVID crisis and the war and other issues. Also, there are some bad decisions made without proper analysis, and always a sort of reaction, not a preparation and not an initiative. So I think we have to be much more capable to thoroughly analyze the situation in which we are, definitely based on the economic fundaments, but also on the technological one, because we see that it is not Europe when the innovation happens now. We are far from being even policy takers. So having in mind that there are lots of innovation in China and in other parts of the world, and if we want to get back to that track, we need to invest a lot of money, especially in the energy, to have enough capacities for artificial intelligence and things like that. But there are lots of other demanding questions, also the structures of the entrepreneurship. I mean, the transnational actors of the business world and the competencies and capabilities of the national governments, but also focusing on questions: what is strategic? What is strategic sovereignty? Is it a mask for a corona crisis to produce, to be able to produce. So we have learned lots of lessons, I think. So we always were thinking about rockets and systems and defense and that stuff, but also not enough. And I think this is what a state, a national economy has to finance, the strategic needs, but not all the other issues. But furthermore, lots of questions also going to the culture. And I know there will be a separate issue, but let me put one single question on that. How much of the Central European countries or the enlarged sphere countries literature is in the, let's say, traditional Western school system as a literature? What difference along the Atlantic coast, let it be Spain or Italy or Netherlands, know about our culture, and I mean the entire region, which I think matters. To understand our tragedies, we know all the battles they have fought, but I'm not sure they know ours. So I think there are lots of questions also to understand. Final point, I think regional cooperation matters a lot because the interests are very much focusing on geographical locations and mutual experiences with each other. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you very much. Now I give you 1 minute each of you to give a clear answer. What can this hopefully enlarged Eastern Central Europe, hopefully enlarged soon with Western Balkans and maybe also quite soon with Ukraine and Moldova, what can it offer to the larger European Union looking for a way out from the labyrinth? I would start with Gellért, very short 1 minute comments and then be wrapping up.
That's a very difficult question. I would say.
Yeah. Sorry, come in, please, because. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had this idea when Britain left the EU that the V4 can replace the position of Britain, which was kind of a common sense in the European decision making when we had Great Britain, and then we had this dream that the V4 is going to be as important as Great Britain was, which never really happened. No. But still, I mean, I think we have a place there to guide, let's say, the discussion in Europe a little bit on our way to understand more different regions, surrounding us based to our culture, to our history, and to our experiences.
Thank you, Lira.
Well, a new kind of space of dialogue, a new kind of understanding. It's important to take in consideration context-sensitive knowledge coming from these sub-regions, like Western Balkans, South Caucasus, Turkey. So more inclusivity. And I think it's important to connect universities everywhere they are, these centers of knowledge, to connect universities with industries, with business, with innovation sector, with public institution, because innovation should be able to address the challenges that we are facing as societies in health, in education, in digital transformation, infrastructure, in all these fields that we need to achieve strategic independence.
Very positive answer. But can we get anything from Istanbul University in Central Europe? Yeah.
Ferenc, this is a very serious question.
Yes.
But it requires a broad answer. But let me briefly say, Europe has been for so many centuries a zone of great power play. Cold War ended it and divided it into two. Now, the Europe, after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, experiencing a unity. I think so far, probably 30 years passed, but it's not a long time. Now we are seeing basically a new order coming, and Europe is in this place taking its role. But I mean, just let me just one sentence. The Spain became a member, and Russia and Turkey turned to be more and more adversarial to Europe, which makes Europe's business a little difficult. That is, I think, important.
Very good, Luka.
Thank you. To move from previous abstract intervention to some more concrete comments, Excellencies mentioned, I think very importantly, regional cooperation. And in bringing in other newcomers to European Union, but also in fostering cooperation and stability between countries of European Union, these are indeed of utmost importance. So 3Cs was mentioned, Iniciativa Trojmorža. I think Croatia has been very constructive there, but European countries still need a bit maturity about such initiatives. I've been involved in this one, for example, to some degree, and it has sometimes degenerated to, let's say, Polish internal party politics when it should be about cooperation. So it is important to engage on the regional level, to engage between countries, and to really foster stability in a time where Europe is under pressure, to destabilize it through cognitive warfare, and for the great powers to use individual European countries in their own interest and to pit them against each other. So we need positive peace, we need stability, and from bottom up and up to the state institutions.
Excellent.
It should
Thank
do
you.
its part.
No, finally, Charlie, going back to the big issue, but from a European point of view. So
Right.
what is your
So-
reflection to what you have?
Okay, well, I think Luka had said earlier that if the action is not quick enough, there's going to be empty spaces that could ultimately be filled by, I guess you would call them bad actors. So I just asked the question, are we in a position to be able to fill that emerging gap? And I think the time is of the essence, so I'll end with that.
Absolutely. I mean, we are out of time, but are there any lingering question? Very short. No long, short question or comment, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really have a short question for Mr. Gellért. Horváth, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for telling us what the new government, it's really exciting to have someone from the new government and telling us what their stance are, especially for the Western Balkans, because I'm Ivana Stepanović from iASK, a research fellow, and I wanted just a quick question to ask you whether this, you mentioned the merit-based approach, and I was just wondering, in the case of Serbia, is it fair to say, or is it true to say that the relation towards Serbia will be different, even though the previous government also supported the accession of Serbia, but in this case it is more like, yes, we support the accession, but accession process and the rules that are related to accession process, and especially the rule of law, and would that be fair to say that it will be a different approach to Serbia? Thank you so much.
Almost short question, yes. Okay, and please a short, quick, precise answer. Who starts? Yes, go on.
I think I got this question. Yeah, so I think I mean the approach towards Serbia on enlargement policy was the same. It's merit-based, and we are going to vote yes if things are done, and then of course we are waiting for answers if things are not. But we believe that they should move on because they've been on the limbo for 5 years now. So something has to happen, and we need a discussion about this. Yeah. Yes.
Next panel, yes.
Well, I mean, on this very specific question, the government position was clear. I mean, there are lots of conditions that has to be fulfilled, and I think that any support to this direction to continue all sort of dialogues in this regard is crucial to accelerate. But there is no question it has to be accelerated because we are too late already by now.
Yeah, but what worries even more is dynamics of problems which are occurring and surrounding around the European Union and Europe as a whole. So these are the problems which are mixing all the time. I mean, trying to be open and friendly on one hand, and on the other hand, you have a number of black clouds around.
I think that European Union will never be complete without the Western Balkans. So all countries of the Western Balkans, because these countries are imperative for the European security and defense architecture. At the same time, as societies, we are waiting a merit-based approach because it benefits to us as societies. We need standards, we need reforms. So in that regard, EU is actually demanding concrete standards and reforms from our elites. The problem is that elites follow double standards. So as societies, we are right when we ask for these values, for these norms. I don't know how it will go, but we have the demonstrations in Serbia and in Albania that people are fighting for democratic values, for European values, so they need to be heard and they need to be taken into account. But at the same time, we have to really figure out where is our place of belonging as Albanians, as Serbians, as Montenegrin. So where is our place of belonging? So it's also important not to, these political elites, not to flirt with all actors that are damaging the interest of European Union and Europe as a whole.
Okay. Any more? No. Okay. Listen, this is an excellent ending without any ending. Questions are open. The question is really, can Europe make it? If we keep the old rules and traditions, my answer is no. It's like a wild problem. We discussed wild problems many times after Professor Gellért, etc. That an equation without solution or paradoxiality. So this is, I think, what we should consider the next hour and tomorrow and after tomorrow. That there's a time pressure. There's an incredible challenge from the east, from the south, United States, from within. We need more fora, more discussion like this, but open ones. And that should this alarm should go towards the best. We invited so many people here. Nobody, for years, nobody's interested in that kind of open discussions from the Western part of Europe. I'm talking about youngsters. I'm very glad to have here young people, PhD students and MA students from Kazakhstan, and wonderful from Southern Caucasus, from Western Balkans. But there is something which is probably not on the cognitive map of our West European friends. So we should find out new ways of communication. It's not enough to say that we are small or we are going to be bigger because Austria will be V5. If we should make suggestions, this is my point. I don't know exactly how, but please think about